Part 3 of The Two Sisters, written by Jeanne Tarpley Fox, all rights reserved, copyrighted material, illustrations by Copilot AI.
Sister, I'm up the stairs to dust. There are fairies flying everywhere, and I really think I must,
Alma called out to Viola 2 days later.
All right,
Viola acknowledged. Alma knew that Viola wouldn't follow her or question her whereabouts for hours. Viola was driven by her own agendas and rarely paid attention to her sister Alma anyway. Alma climbed the first staircase with her clunky shoes, and once she reached the landing, slipped off her shoes and tucked them inside one of the empty bedrooms. Her shoes were noisy, and stealth was required for what she was about to do. There would be no floating and no dreaming today. Then she went to the servants' stairs at the back of the hall and descended the old wooden steps quietly in her bare feet down into the kitchen. Viola was not there, so she left right out the back door and headed for the chicken coop. She snatched up Stella, heaving her arms around her heavy body, and snuck out the yard's back gate with chicken under arm. She huffed and puffed as she walked down the sidewalk with the chicken under her arm and in her bare feet. Her old body forgot the strain it was under because she had a specific purpose in mind: to save Stella. When she reached the neighbor's house she had in mind 2 blocks away, she walked the fence line toward the backyard, where she saw other chickens grazing. Making sure no one was looking, she heaved Stella over the fence, who squawked and fluttered her great yellow body clumsily as she was cast into the yard. She was a big girl. Then, satisfied she had not been seen, Alma made her way back to the sidewalk and walked 8 blocks to town in her bare feet on the cold October sidewalk. She went inside the butcher's shop. "Help you, Miss Alma?" the white-aproned butcher behind the case inquired. And standing there, he glanced down at Alma's bare feet under her day dress. Alma, not even thinking of her feet, instead became self-conscious of her compulsion to rhyme.
Chicken,
she managed to stutter, and then she couldn't do it. She could not resist the impulse to rhyme.
Oh my goodness, you're chicken best. You're biggest, plumpest of the breast,
she exclaimed, and pulled a bulky hanky out of her bra. She untied it to retrieve the coins that would pay for the chicken, and counted them out to the butcher. She had enough to pay, just enough. Taking the chicken from the butcher wrapped in paper, she scuttled home with it, her bare feet scraping the rough cement sidewalks as she cut through neighbor's grass to enter through the backyard gate. Once in the backyard, she unwrapped the chicken, and holding the chicken with one hand, burned the butcher paper with the other in the large metal drum used for garbage that was left continually burning. She took the plucked, enormous chicken in through the back door of the house. It was indeed a big bird.
"Here's your chick. Take her quick,"
Alma said to a surprised Viola, heaving the chicken up at Viola, who caught it in her hands.
"My, that was fast. I'd almost forgotten,"
Viola said, surprised as she received the bird.
"What did you do with the feathers?"
Alma was ready for Viola's questions.
"In the attic, you will see, is where the chicken feathers be."
Alma lied. She often lied to Viola, just to avoid a scolding. She knew what Viola wanted to hear, but it didn't explain why she had brought the chicken in through the back door. Alma also knew that Viola hardly ever went upstairs, even to the 3rd floor, and never to the attic, where they stored sacks of feathers from previous birds and various other hoardings. Viola seemed satisfied and pleased with the task being done, and asked no more questions, not about the dusting or the bird, but began busily preparing the bird for a dinner for them. Alma washed her hands and dried them, and went to the front room window, where she picked up a pair of opera glasses and began peering out the window, a favorite pastime. She spied 2 little girls and a little boy coming up the sidewalk to the front door.
Buck, 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 buck.
Alma imitated the alarm cry of the chickens that something was approaching. She had a tendency to speak in chicken, dog, and cat. A tiny knock was heard at the front door.
The children are here! The children have come! Quick, Sister Nichols! Go fetch us some!
Alma cried as she hurried to the door. Opening the door, 2 little neighborhood girls, Doris and Sandy, and one little boy, Joey, stood looking up at her.
Hello, Miss Alma. Can we get some candy?
The 2 girls asked in unison. The little boy, Joey, rubbed a dirty hand across his runny nose and said nothing. Alma ushered the children in lovingly and gleefully.
Enter, children, come this way. You're going to get some sweets this day. Viola dear, please come out. The children are here.
Viola put down her kitchen chore, wiped her hands on her apron, and went to greet the children. Viola had had a soft spot for children. She endured no nonsense from anyone except for the children. The children were always welcomed. As a child, Viola had been a social and fairly popular child. She entertained the neighborhood children with playing teacher or library, or serving them pretend tea on the porch from their child's tea set. Alma herself had not been a popular child, but all of the neighborhood children had included her regardless. They thought her strange, but liked to sit in the shade of the huge painted wood front porch with her and Viola. Spindle games, string games, or capturing daddy long legs and pulling an occasional leg off of them were amusements the children also enjoyed. One such day long ago, with the neighborhood children visiting, Alma dreamed, looking down and fingering a fallen maple tree wearily, and murmured, I love my house. The 2 other children with her, a boy and a girl, were slightly envious of the perfectly groomed Alma in stockings without holes, the lace dress and curled hair with an enormous bow. The privilege of living in the big old house, since they lived in much more modest accommodation on the street and were not so nearly carefully dressed, did not at all sit right with them.
If you love your stupid old house so much, why don't you marry it then?
The little boy had said.
Yeah, why don't you marry it then?
The little girl chimed in. Alma stopped what she was doing, and there, with her stocking legs and button-up shoes sprawled on the porch, gazed up at them with a terrifying and fierce solemnity. The darkness in her eyes was in contrast to her light, ladylike dress.
I will someday,
she said, glowering and growling at the children.
I will.
In saying all these things, she had not rhymed at all, but punctuated her final declaration with a buck buck of a puppy, which had startled the children. She then dropped her eyes back down and went to playing with the maple whirly between her fingers. You're crazy, the little boy had sassed.
Yeah, you're crazy. You're a cracked nut,
the little girl had added, and they had both run from the porch, their shoes on the steps punctuating the sound of their hasty departure.
Hello, Miss Alma. Can we get some candy?
The 2 girls asked in unison. On this day, a desk fan was humming slowly and turning in the room to the right of the children, staving off the morning heat, and the gleam of the stray rays of sun could be seen on the original and dated curl of wooden gnarls and knobs of antique furniture. A cat had been resting there on the buffet, and stirred by the change of activity in the house, poured to the ground with a thud.
Viola dear! Viola dear, bring the nickels, the children are here!
Viola brought nickels out to Alma and the children. A huge wardrobe was sitting in the room with a skeleton key in its lock. Alma turned the key slowly with glee and anticipation. Inside the wardrobe stood only one coveted item, as though enshrined, a red metal gumball dispenser on a metal post. Their father had obtained it from a store closure sale. Alma distributed one nickel to each of the children, and the children by turns placed their nickels in the candy machine and turned the silver knob around to release candy into their sweaty little hands. What came out of the candy machine were some long expired red, yellow, and green covered chocolate M&Ms that were oozing oily little dots of white as though they were dabbed with Crisco. The trusting children ate them greedily, although they really did not taste so good.
There's more! There's more!
Alma declared.
You've sailed to a generous shore!
And with that, Alma fetched a dusty box of fancy chocolates from the drawer of an elaborate buffet furniture piece. These chocolates, too, had long expired, but the sister's vision and the children's inexperience made this fact unimportant. The children oohed and awed as they selected chocolate, now dusted white with the disintegration of age, and from these remaining pieces they began to try to enjoy them.
Miss Alma,
pleaded Dorothy, her mouth full of chocolate,
will you take your hair down for us? Please, oh please, will you take your hair down?
Alma scuttled away to a bedroom on the first floor and returned with a hairbrush from an antique set. In the sickly light coming from the slightly open drapes in the room, Alma unwound her hair braid and undid her braid.
Wow! Ooh! Ah!
The children gasped as Alma's hair fell toward the floor and around her ankles. The children were amazed at the length of Alma's hair, and it never ceased to entertain them. The girls had never seen anything so beautiful to them. They gazed with mouths open at the gray and blonde shining hair, the longest hair they had ever seen. Then, after a while, with no more candy to be had, and having gotten what they came for, Dorothy announced,
Okay, Miss Alma, we have to go now.
And off they scuttled, pulling open the great front door as best they could with their tiny arms, and out of the house and down the porch stairs, the sound of their shoes making a hasty clunking noise on the gray-painted wood of the porch and stairs. They departed to their next adventure. The children of the neighborhood were alternately fascinated by the big old house and the sisters in the daytime, and frightened of the house at night. Their visits were always brief, but welcomed.
Dinner, sister, come eat,
Viola called. Alma obeyed and joined Viola at the dining room table that evening. Viola would be serving what she thought was their chicken, Stella. Viola began grace. She lifted her chin and with eyes closed began dramatically,
Oh, Lord, we thank you for this food from the altar of thy bounty. Thy rich blessings are too numerous to count, O Lord, and we do thank you from the humblest corner of our hearts. In thy glorious name, amen.
Suddenly, Viola dropped her fork onto her plate with a clang, startling Alma. Viola dissolved into tears, her head dropping, and Alma, stunned, sat mid-bite staring at her.
It has occurred to me, dear sister,
said Viola through sobs,
that one should not eat one's friends. Throw the chicken away, sister, and do not eat one more bite of our dear Stella,
she declared passionately. Still stunned, and now disappointed because she was very hungry, Alma sat.
Throw it away, I tell you, throw it! I can't stand the smell of it, it's stinging my nose.
Still stunned and now disappointed because she was very hungry, Alma sat.
"Throw it away, I tell you! Throw it! Throw it! I can't stand the smell of it! It's clinging in my nose!"
Viola cried. Oh, poor dear Stella! Poor Stella! Viola sobbed.
"How can you even think of eating our poor dear Stella so greedily? Oh!"
Alma rose to obey hurriedly and scuttled out to the burn barrel with the chicken to dump the nearly entire huge body of what was not Stella into it. Before she did, though, she tore some chunks off of it and shoved them into her mouth. Standing in the dark night of fall, illuminated by the coals of the burn barrel, she stood, tearing chicken flesh and skin as quickly as she could, her gnarled hands and alarmed face becoming slippery with delicious chicken juices. Alma gorged an impressive amount of roasted bird within minutes before she finally abandoned her hunger and tumbled the nearly entire chicken into the burn barrel with one rolling drop and an air of tragedy. She stood staring at the flames, consuming her dinner, eyes wide. She had been hungry. End of part 3.